Joining us right now with their take, host of Tony Katz Today and Eat, Drink, Smoke, Tony Katz, and Director of Press Communications for the Trump 2020 campaign and Vice President of TAG Strategies, Karine. I guess my first question, Tony, is the over-under on how long Karine Jean-Pierre will have the job before John Kirby takes it over. Because yesterday, for instance, I think she referred to Clarence Thomas twice as Thompson, Justice Thompson. She clearly is in over her head. At first, I was leery of saying that because for reasons that are unfortunately obvious. But it does seem like the dynamic there at the White House is different when John Kirby is at the podium, at least.
I think there's always a problem when we don't address things and the issues that exist as they are, because they are issues. And the people addressing the issues with Karine Jean-Pierre are the press corps there in the White House. They're not getting answers. They're getting these pat answers that come out of the book, and she flips to the page. She does not engage. And your conversation about Clarence Thomas, not only did she refer to him as Clarence Thompson, she referred to him as Judge Clarence Thompson, as opposed to Justice Clarence Thomas. So that argument of she's not living up to the job and not handling it well, I think is very, very true. I don't know if your answer is John Kirby or not, but there is this larger conversation that we expect from a White House press secretary to be able to engage in some give and take with that press corps is something that they look forward to.
Absolutely.
And it is interesting to watch in hindsight that Jen Psaki did some of that. I wasn't a fan of hers for sure, but she did do some of that, and people missed that. That's a very telling statement and a factual statement about what it is the press needs out of a press secretary and what they're not getting with Karine Jean-Pierre.
Aaron, your thoughts on that?
It's clear this White House has a huge messaging problem from the top down. And so instead of addressing it, to Tony's point and to your point, Bob, they're just going to try to crutch along on this. They're going to put other advisors in the briefing room. They're going to try to sideline Karine without taking her completely off the podium, because I think in their mind, it's probably too soon to do that, right? You can't hire someone like Karine Jean-Pierre, as they stood up there talking about how she is an openly gay, Black, first White House press secretary. They won't take her down off the podium anytime soon. So they'll just keep bringing in other people to try to hide for the fact that A, they don't have a good message, B, their policies are failing, and C, so is their White House press secretary, who won't do the basic job of answering reporter questions. There's difference between spinning answers and straight up not answering them. Karine does the latter.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think they're going to just have her. I think they're going to promote her. My theory is that's why, what is it, Bedingfield, I forgot her name off the top of my head, the White House communications director.
Kate Bedingfield.
Yes, that she left. My theory is in order for them to promote her technically into that role and then put somebody like Kirby there on a daily basis, who clearly has more of an ability to interact with the press. And I agree with his predecessor, their predecessor, that I wasn't a big Jen Psaki fan, but man, she held on to the bull horns, and she rode that thing, and she was pretty sharp. So we'll leave it there. We have more of a conversation coming up after the break. All right, in today's edition of Woke Culture, President Biden's Assistant Secretary for Health, well, is at it again. Rachel Levine saying we can't put limits on transgender treatments for kids. Let's bring our panel back in, Tony and Aaron. Aaron, I forget the term they use, but we're talking about altering genders. We're not talking about just how you feel. We're talking about the government supporting emotionally, psychologically, and sometimes financially, these changes that these kids in many cases aren't prepared for. And it strikes me as kind of an abuse.
I think that's probably a fair criticism. It's also fair to say that, you know, about 80% of kids who believe when they are younger that they are one gender end up staying the gender they were in the long run. So to try and say that we need as a society to push and support and go after these children for gender reassignment surgery and things along those lines, that's just not a good policy position for the United States. When it comes to mental health, when it comes to be able to support children who do or may believe that they are a different gender than they are in their body, absolutely. People should receive the support they need. There's no question about that. And we need to really be caring and careful about that, because it is true that transgender youth are more likely to have suicidal ideations. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But the balance here is really important. The government shouldn't be a propaganda arm for gender reassignment surgery, and they're becoming dangerously close to that.
Yeah, and I think Reddit banned the term groomer related to these, because I don't know, Tony. I guess I'm old-fashioned. I think if you have a bunch of kids and you take them to a party with drag queens, that's more grooming than educating. And it's not like you're taking kids to strip clubs, okay? And so this all just comes across wrong to me.
First, just for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to put the groomer conversation to the side, because Aaron, I disagree with you a little bit. The term you're looking for, Bob, is gender affirming. And that's what Rachel Levine there is saying, that we need to be gender affirming and we need to allow these things, including medicines, including surgeries. This is wrong. This is absolutely violent. This is abusive. I would tell Rachel Levine this nose to nose. These are children we're talking about, and children cannot determine their gender. They can't. And to say otherwise is abusive, is to rip away the idea of childhood at all. And if children can decide their own gender, what else can they decide? This takes us down an ugly, violent path. On the very idea of suicidal thoughts, because we hear this very often, if you don't do this, it leads children to suicide. I have spent part of my life depressed and part of my life suicidal, and it was a terrible, awful experience. And there is a hotline out there. It's 988 now for people who want to use the 3-digit code. You can dial 988. I never had to make that call. Feel free to make that call. But it comes from within, and people can argue this with me if they will, because I don't accept, or I won't use a pronoun, or I won't engage a certain way, does not make me or you or anybody else guilty of somebody else possibly thinking of taking their lives. That comes from within. Whether or not we love children who are having questions, we should. I agree with you there, Aaron, wholeheartedly. But the idea that we have to somehow placate or accept or engage in gender affirming, as Rachel Levine is explaining, is wrong. It is dangerous. It is an ugly, violent thing to do. It is hateful of children. And we as adults and as parents should say no to that.
Okay, we've got like a minute left, Aaron. I want to get your thoughts on this. AOC today reportedly arrested in front of the Supreme Court for disrupting traffic. What do you think she's up to?
Well, if you actually watch this video, it's very comical. She's standing with her hands behind her back, pretending to have these handcuffs on, and then poof, all of a sudden she's Harry Houdini and her hands are free and she's waving to the crowd and she's got a fist in the air. This is what the left does. They rail about injustice. They talk about the freedom and the democracy. None of these Congress members are going to get in any real trouble whatsoever for this arrest. But if you're any of these other people and you're actually arrested, that could actually be a problem. It's all for show. It's pathetic. AOC, Ilhan Omar, the whole lot of them, whatever. Like, get a life, honestly, all of them. They're just acting like fools.
All right. Aaron Perini, Tony Katz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Take care.